Okay, so this is a teacher interview with me and Miss Schluter. I'm Isaac Raya, and it is November 12th, 2015. And I'm going to be discussing, I think, 12 questions. 13.
Wow.
13 questions. And I'll try to go as fast as I can. Currently, I teach at Kenilworth Junior High School. I teach 8th grade and a 7-8 mix digital media broadcasting class. My 8th grade class is a U.S. history class. And this is a follow-up post-observation discussion about a unit leading up to the Constitution and then past the Constitution.
All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so the first question is, how did you become knowledgeable about the subject you teach and about how best to teach the students that you serve? So you might want to start with a little bit about what is the population of students that you serve in your class?
So the population that I serve so they're 8th grade students, and I have a mix of different students. For most part, if they're in my regular U.S. history classes and they were an English language learner, they've been redesignated. So most of them are very proficient at speaking English, reading, and writing. What else? I think that at Kenilworth there is a 30% Latino population.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's also a 30% free and reduced lunch
for
Title I students. So those are the students that I teach. But how about becoming knowledgeable about this subject matter? I did have a major at UC Davis for political science, public service.
Okay.
And I took some history courses. And then, of course, I passed my competency exams. I think that they were called praxis at the time that I took those exams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been teaching U.S. history for 11 years now.
All right. Great. That's a long time. All right. So how do you stay abreast of subjects that you teach and of the current research on how best to teach them? So what's the most current or recent professional development that you've done?
And so the ongoing professional development has to do with my PLN. My PLN is composed of the other history teachers here at Kenilworth. And we talk about our techniques that we use in our classrooms, and that's the majority of my professional development is working with those teachers. This year, I hope to go to Social Studies Conference, the California History Social Studies Conference. I think that it's in Long Beach this year, and to learn from them. The other ways that I do keep on top of my professional development is that I am an avid follower of the Stanford History Education Group techniques, and most of their work is about looking at primary sources and analyzing primary sources for sourcing and corroboration and contextualization. And then I'm also part of the California History Social Science Project through UC Davis, and I have used their blueprint on the Civil War before. I think they've come out with some new material this year that I'll be checking out too. So hopefully I'll be able to go to some more professional development at their sites where they offer them.
Great. All right, so question number 3. How do you become familiar with your students' skills and knowledge? For example, what kind of diagnostic assessments do you use or information from previous years?
Okay, so it's ongoing. As a teacher, you always have to make sure that you are not assuming that they have learned skills. And because if you do assume that, then what ends up happening is that you have students that may fail your test because you're assuming that they've already learned some skills. Hold on 1 second.
And we're back. Are we back?
Yes. So
we were on question number 3, and I think the last thing that you said was that it's never appropriate to assume that they have a certain skill or something. And so how do you familiarize yourself with their skills and knowledge?
Yeah, so we do writing samples at the beginning of the school year, and then we perform repetitions on some of the very basic skills that we do in class. So, for instance, that paragraph form, I'll rep that about 4 or 5 times, and then they get very familiar with it. And then I know that because they've done it in my class a number of times that they should know what to do. And then from there, I can assess their grammar and their critical thinking and analysis skills.
And you use
that's just one way.
Same tool to assess for their like knowledge and comprehension of the content?
Yes.
Or are there
Yes.
other types of assessments?
There are other types of assessments that I do. I use Google Forms and create quizzes, and then after that, sometimes I calculate the total and I put it into the gradebook, but most of the time I don't. Most of the time I just show them their results, and I'm hoping that on some of those multiple choice tests that the class aggregate as a whole reaches 80%. If it doesn't, we usually go back and reteach it, and then we take another similar test to see if they've reached an 80% comprehension, and then I can kind of gauge this.
So what's the feedback loop on something like that? Like, so if they do a Google form assessment, when do they receive those results? Is it
Immediately.
Instantaneously?
Oh, immediately. As soon as the last person's done, through Google Forms, you're able to have an add-on called Flubaroo, and I think that you're familiar with it. And then at the very end, I can look at the summary of their results. I can also email them back with the test key. And within seconds, each kid has gotten their test results back with a yes or no answer in like the appropriate placement. And then I usually show them the class aggregate, the pie charts and histograms of how they performed on the test.
Are they allowed to retake them, or since you're not really, you're probably giving them like points for participation as opposed to points for correct answers? So it's more of like an activity as opposed to.
Right. It's much more like an activity than anything else. And if I do see that there's something that needs to be worked out again, then we won't take a multiple choice test. We'll do paragraphs, or we'll do more reading, we'll do more discussions, or we'll do debates.
So it's truly
something like
formative
that.
then, not summative in nature. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so question number 4. How do you become familiar with your students' individual interests and cultural backgrounds?
I saw Greg Rayaski last year stand in front of his classroom and greet every single student coming in into class. He shook their hand.
Yeah.
And I've liked to do that before, but it had been a while since I had been really doing that. This year, I make sure that I stand in front of class and I shake each student's hand and make them look at me in the face every single day. And that simple little action, what that does is it makes it so that I am less intimidating to talk to, so that they can email me if they need help on something. I mean, whatever it is, academic or maybe socially. And I've found that this year that things have changed a little bit in terms of the way that students approach me. I've got more kids that are approaching me through email, and then also just after class.
And you
on
feel
campus.
that that's a result of
I feel that that's a result
personal
of
connection?
me just shaking their hand and looking them in the face and smiling at them, and then asking them how they're doing. And that's irregardless, of whether or not they're getting a B or an F or a D in my class. It doesn't matter. I shake their hands anyway. And I know that when I was in school, if I was doing poorly in the class, I didn't want to look the teacher in the face. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I want them to know that they should be comfortable with me, and that they can continue to work out problems instead of shying away from whatever it is.
So are those interactions through email or social media or however you're digitally interacting with them, are they expressing personal interests, or does it still kind of very professional about what did I miss in class, here's my assignment, or do you feel like you get some of the personal too?
I think I get some of the personal too. I mean, it's hard. There's 150 kids.
Yeah, it's hard to have a personal connection with
It
every
is.
single
It is.
one,
It's really hard. But my classroom is always open. If you come here at lunch, you'll know that there's a bunch of kids in here, and they're sometimes they're talking to me, sometimes they're just enjoying their lunch. But yeah, I'd like to find out more about the kids. At the beginning of the school year, I always have them write something about them that's personal, that's private, that only I'm going to read and no one else is going to see it. And then I read it at that point, but then I reread them like right around now. It's like when I'll be rereading them to remember who the face is and what they've written about. And usually I can connect to them even further right about now.
Yeah, it takes some time.
It does. It takes a little bit of time to establish relationships.
All right, question number 5. Describe how you establish and implement important classroom routines and procedures. I've seen a little bit of that in my observations.
Like what? What have you seen?
Well, I've seen how you use the table partner grouping, and the students get the assigned letter A, B, C, or D, and then when you call on students, randomly, everybody has to have the answer prepared. So they help each other get ready to respond should their letter be called. So that's one, but also just the different room configurations. So you want to explain a little bit about how that's going? How long does it take you to establish those kinds of, routines where you rearrange the room for different learning activities and things?
John Carippo, one of my mentors, he said about 4 or 5 repetitions, and I think that's about true. But if you stop doing the repetitions, then they'll lose it. So if I stop moving the tables around and having them move the tables appropriately, then they'll lose it. Or if I stop having them speak in formatted discussions, then they'll lose it. But if I practice it and I make sure I practice it, once a week, then they'll be very proficient at it, and they'll understand their expectations. So those 2 things are some of the things that I do. One of the things that I really like doing is having them stand up in alphabetical order, and I do that for a number of different reasons. One of them just to get them up out of their seats. The second one to be able to speak with someone who they don't normally sit next to really quickly. Then the third one to be able to grab their attention while they're standing in a line and they're all facing in the same direction. And the fourth one to be able to practice getting up and into a line when it's an absolute necessity, like an emergency or something like that. And the alphabetical order one I've been doing for a long time, and that's from actually Nancy Blake. They hand in their stuff alphabetically if they have a paper copy of something that they have to turn in, or some type of form or whatever. But if there's a fire drill or an emergency, any kind of emergency drill, getting them up in alphabetical order is it's one of the best things that I've done.
Oh, great. Yeah, they're really good at it.
They are.
They're
very
fast.
Good. They're very fast at it.
A few times I've observed, so that's great. So we're on question number 7. This will probably be the last one, and then we'll come.
What about number 6 here?
I skipped 6 tonight. So I think we'll do this last one, and then we'll do a take 2.
Sure.
So that we don't have to shortchange ourselves. So number 6. Describe how you establish and maintain standards of student conduct.
Consistency is the key. If something bothers me about the way that the class is behaving or an individual behaves, I do not neglect it. I address it right then and there. Usually if it's something where there's a student who's not paying attention or being distracted, I usually do a proximity thing where I come close to them and I tap them on the shoulder, I give them some type of a hand signal or something like that. And then if it continues, then I will use my verbal warnings. And then I have a system of verbal warnings. The third verbal warning results in a detention. The second one results in a lunch detention, and the first one is just knock it off. That's your freebie. And then the fourth one, if I was to go farther than the fourth one, and it really has never happened, that's a referral, and then a meeting with the principal, and a parent phone call home, and that stuff. So the kids know that's my warning system for individuals, and then for the class, if I can't figure out what's going on, then what I do is I give the class a strike. On the third strike, they have to stay a minute after class, and I'm really consistent with that, and the kids know it. And if I remind them. If I'm having trouble with a class or a kid at the beginning of class, I let them know that that's what's going to be happening that day. And usually there's no problems.
Oh, good.
Usually there's no problems, especially if I let them know what the expectation is and what's going to happen. Then
Usually step it up.
they're usually pretty good about it.
Okay. Well, we're about to run out of time for this session, so we'll do 7 through 13 next time.